At the end of the 19th century, in the heart of Central Africa, a vast and fertile land became the personal property of a single man, Leopold II, King of the Belgians. Not Belgium, not a government, one man. He called this territory the Congo Free State. Independent from whom? Certainly not from the Congolese. Officially, Leopold II claimed he wanted to bring civilization, trade, and modernity. In reality, he was pursuing an obsession: rubber. At that time, industrial Europe was exploding. Tires, cables, and machines required massive quantities of rubber. The Congo was full of it. But to extract this wealth, the king established a brutal system of exploitation: forced labor, hostage-taking, burned villages, mutilations to punish those who failed to meet quotas. Severed hands became the tragic symbol of that era. Soldiers of the Force Publique demanded proof for every bullet fired: a human hand. 10 million deaths are often mentioned. The figure is debated. Some historians question its accuracy. But one thing is certain: the Congolese population declined dramatically between 1885 and 1908. Behind the statistics, there were mothers torn away from their children, men chained in the forest, entire villages erased. This was not simple colonization. It was an economy of terror. Yet this tragedy remains little studied in schools around the world. It is discussed in some universities in specialized books. Among the historians who have worked on this issue is Ilikia Mbokolo, Director of Studies at EHSS, a recognized specialist in African colonial history. His research shows that what happened in the Congo was not an isolated accident, but a structured, deliberate, organized system, an early form of a globalized economic system. What happened in the Congo foreshadowed some of today's problems: massive resource extraction, multinational corporations more powerful than states, local wealth transformed into foreign profits, populations left in poverty. Yesterday, it was rubber. Today, it is cobalt, coltan, strategic minerals. History seems to change its costume, but sometimes it keeps the same face. A question that still concerns us: why is this history so rarely told? Why does it remain buried in library basements? Perhaps because it disturbs. Perhaps because it forces us to confront the violent foundations of modern European wealth. But one thing is certain: as long as this history is not fully acknowledged, it will continue to haunt relations between Africa and Europe. As long as this history is not fully acknowledged, it will continue to haunt relations between Africa and Europe. After 1908, when international scandal erupted and pressure became too strong, Leopold II was forced to hand over his Congo Free State to Belgium. Officially, the most visible abuses were ended. Officially, reforms were promised. But the deeper logic did not disappear. The Congo became the Belgian Congo. The system changed its name, not its soul. Large mining companies settled in. Copper from Katanga, gold, diamonds, uranium, everything flowed to Europe. In colonial schools, Congolese children were taught to obey, to serve, to become auxiliaries in a system they did not control. They were taught Belgian history. Little was said about their own kingdoms, their own resistance movements, their own heroes. An evolved elite was formed, but always under supervision. Just enough was given to stabilize, never enough to liberate. Meanwhile, Europe prospered. Ports expanded, industries modernized, wealth circulated. But in the Congo, infrastructure was built mainly to extract, not to connect people to one another. Roads led to mines, railways led to ports, everything converged toward exportation. Then came 1960, independence. A wind of hope swept across the country. A people arose demanding sovereignty, dignity, and a future. Leaders emerged, speeches vibrated with a new ambition, a Congo in control of its own resources. But the Cold War had begun. The world was now divided into blocks, and the Congo, rich in strategic minerals, became a major geopolitical stake. Internal tensions intensified, foreign interests intertwined with local political struggles, provinces attempted secession, powers observed, intervened, sometimes manipulated. The shadow of the colonial past still hovered. It was no longer a king as owner, it was networks of interests. Mining contracts were negotiated far from the villages where the earth was dug. Decisions were made in distant capitals. The people waited for the wealth of their soil to finally transform their daily lives. And in memories, the scars did not disappear. They were passed down, in grandparents' stories, in family silences, in instinctive distrust towards certain institutions. Because history is not just a sequence of events, it is an invisible structure that shapes power relations. Even today, when economic partnerships between Africa and Europe are discussed, the words are modern: cooperation, investment, sustainable development. But behind these words, one question remains. Who truly controls the resources? Who sets the rules? Who benefits the most? Congolese minerals power the batteries of phones, electric cars, advanced technologies. The world is moving toward energy transition, and at the heart of that transition, the Congo remains central. Yet in some regions, populations still live without stable electricity. Schools lack resources, hospitals lack equipment. The contrast is brutal, as if the past refused to remain in the past. As if the past refused to remain in the past. In the eastern part of the country, green hills hide a treasure turned curse: coltan, gold, tin, minerals essential to the global digital economy. Armed groups appear, disappear, change names, change alliances. Officially, they defend a cause. Unofficially, they control mines, roads, smuggling routes. Trade never stopped. It only changed actors. The minerals still leave. They cross borders. They enter complex supply chains. Then they become phones, computers, batteries. Somewhere in Europe or Asia, a consumer buys a brand new device. They often ignore that at the beginning of that chain, a teenager was digging the earth with bare hands. Multinational corporations speak of traceability. Reports speak of responsible minerals. International conferences speak of regional stability. But on the ground, insecurity persists. The paradox is cruel. The more technological the world becomes, the more certain areas of the Congo remain trapped in a survival economy. At the political level, the state attempts to regain control. Reforms are announced, partnerships are signed, promises of local transformation emerge, refining locally, processing locally, creating jobs locally. But external pressure is constant. Global markets never sleep. Prices rise, prices fall, contracts are renegotiated, interests are reshaped. In European capitals, people now speak of shared memory, restitution of artworks, historical responsibility. Statues are questioned, archives are reopened. The colonial past returns to public debate. But memory alone does not feed a population. Symbolic recognition is not enough to transform the economic structures inherited from the 19th century. The question becomes deeper. Can a truly balanced relationship between Africa and Europe be built without rethinking the very foundations of the global economic system? Can we speak of partnership when raw materials leave unprocessed and return transformed at a higher price? Meanwhile, a new Congolese generation is rising. Local entrepreneurs, engineers, researchers, artists. They no longer want only to denounce the past, they want to redefine the future. In universities, colonial history is studied not to remain prisoners of pain, but to understand the mechanisms of economic domination. African thinkers analyze globalization critically. What happened in the Congo under Leopold II may have been a brutal and concentrated version of dynamics that still exist today in more subtle forms. The difference today is that the world is interconnected. Voices circulate, testimonies spread. A local scandal can become an international issue within hours. But is that enough to change power relations? Because at its core, the history of the Congo is not only the story of an exploited territory, it is the story of a country placed at the center of global appetites. Yesterday for rubber, yesterday for uranium, today for cobalt, and tomorrow